All right, so the first question is how did your relationship with your father affect your life in a positive way?
Well, I had my dad with me the entire time. So, I think that was the most positive. I got a chance to see him um, pour into my mother, two-parent household, Oakland, California. Um, Put me in like really good schools, definitely mentored into me the importance of work. I watched him work, 9 to 5 at Pacific Bell at the time. And then I also saw him selling his own merchandise. So we would go to San Mateo for like pin shows, and people would be selling all different types of memorabilia. He'd always want to go to like he took us to the '84 Olympics. I mean, at the time I was only what 3 years old, so I don't really remember it. But he also went to the '96 Olympics in Atlanta, and by that time he had already established in my mind like, okay, this is like a good side hustle, good side business. And so he instilled that work ethic in me. He instilled the athletics in me. We used to play tennis all the time, basketball all the time. I'd be running track growing up, and playing those other sports growing up. So, it was, I mean, he was really there for me. Then, like, we'd always sit at the dinner table, have conversations about life, um, economics, social stuff. So I was privy to conversations and learning about Black thought, European thought, um, different types of philosophies, like Eastern philosophies, Western philosophies. I was just soaking it all up. My dad was really, he was really into what he wanted me to have by the time he had me, because he was 41 when he had me. You know
Mm,
what I mean? So he was already a little bit older. He already had two other kids before me, from a previous relationship that didn't necessarily work out. And he's been with my mom ever since. And he also had my sister, who's 2 years younger than me. So we had a really good life, man. I really can't say I had any complaints at all. Um, I know that's one of the reasons why I think the way that I think in terms of just handling business on a day to day. Um, it's just like he was definitely just the epitome of what a man is. And he was, I think, like all sons, all daughters, like our father is our superhero, you know what I'm saying? Like if it's right, you know what I mean? If it's the right situation. Sorry, turn this light back on. If it's the right situation, you know what I'm saying? Um, so he was definitely my superhero. And then I realized, some things change, as you get a little bit older, you start seeing the human side of people, but he was definitely there, man. Like always present, always wanted to, show interest in what we wanted to do, would always push us, would always pour into us. Never had to worry about not having anything. So, I mean, Pops was just salute to Pops, you know what I mean? Like for real.
got
Like
you.
Pops is really, that's the man. Like I wouldn't be the man I am today without Pops.
Got you.
Hmm.
Now, B parts of that question. On the other side, like you had said, like people get older, you start to, especially not as they get older, but more so you, right? You mature.
Hmm.
So you start to see those other side,
Hmm.
parent or your teacher or your or whoever the case may be. So how did your relationship with your father affect you in a negative way? Or
Yeah.
negatives there?
I mean, I think like, even if I'm going to start from the younger side, like, I mean, even though my dad was always there, he was, he was present, like gave me everything, like, wasn't tripping. He did have a typical black man 80s vibe. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't take no shit. Like, you feel me? If you do anything that you're not supposed to be doing, that's your ass. You gonna get the belt to ass. And that was definitely happening. You know what I mean? Like I didn't have um I mean, even though I had everything I needed, my dad was like, he was hard. He was real hard. Um, and I think that's definitely what was needed in certain respects. But at some points, I understand how he went overboard on certain things and how that affected his life with his children. Because, like I said, he had two other children previous to me, and then like my younger sister. And so I look at that and I'm like, oh, I wish those relationships were better. And I look at the way that he did things and I'm like, I don't necessarily want to do it like that, but I understand the jewel that he was trying to drop, discipline, right? Um, so I think like that's the side that I look at from the past, um, that I think that he could have done a lot better on, or at least in my opinion, would have liked him to do a little bit better on. I also think that when it came to just emotional intelligence about relationships and about what it means to be a husband, or the difference between monogamy and polygamy and all these different things that you might hear of, like just all these labels, he didn't want to talk about any of that.
Mm.
And again, I think that goes back to black man in the 80s kind of situation, growing up in Oakland, probably seeing a lot. He's, like I said, he was older, so he's 85 now. So he grew up in the 60s, really. So he saw a lot of stuff going on with the Black Panthers when they went to Sacramento and had their guns, and then that completely changed the way. I mean, he knew all that. So he used to teach me all those things. But I think not understanding the way women are and having a real firm sense of like, hey, this is what you need to do growing up. You know, I wish you would have told me more about monogamy. You know what I mean? Because I feel like the culture kind of teaches you all of that.
Mm.
If you don't have your father in your ear telling you, hey, this is what happens. Even if you see it, even if it's out there, it's just part of the chemicals that change as you become, of age, and you turn from like a little boy into a man. Like all that testosterone floods, and all of a sudden your voice gets deeper, your muscles start getting bigger. You know what I mean? Like you physically look like a man. And I just wish that he would have told me certain things, because I did make some mistakes. And I'm not going to blame him for it because that was my choice. I'm a grown man, so I take responsibility, but I do wish that I would have had a little bit different type of guidance. I used to think soiling your royal oats was the thing to do. That was coming to America. You know what I'm saying? That was like, yo, you need to come out and just go ahead and soil them things. Like, do what you need to do. Like, have as much, sex as you can. Free love. I mean, this is the Bay Area too, right? So, that's kind of like the mantra back in the '60s and '70s for those people who wanted to, partake. So, I mean, I guess that's kind of into the culture, but I realize there's a lot of consequences that come with that lifestyle, man. You know what I'm saying? So I wish you would have said that, and then I wish that just between like the way my sister and I were raised, I do understand the gender dynamics, but I wish he would have told me, like, instead of saying, like, he would say stuff like, don't talk to your sister, leave her alone, that kind of stuff, right? Because he had like I mean, that's his little girl, so he really loved her, but he never explained to me how like it's important it is to take care of a woman. I mean, I watched him do it with my mom, but I also saw fighting. I also saw, situations where he would stonewall for long periods of time. I've had problems with that myself, like stonewalling my woman. Um, so there's certain things that he taught me that I didn't really recognize were detrimental for relationships until I got into those situations and then reflected back, like, oh damn, like maybe I shouldn't have done that.
Mm.
Maybe I should have looked at it from this angle. I also think in general, my dad was he was like a traditional kind of dude, but then also revolutionary. So those two things kind of were, they were opposed to each other. And being someone who was like a provider, but then also extremely angry about the way that I think also, growing up from his background and what he was going through, he had a lot of run-ins with white people that he didn't really like. And, that really shaped his, thought process, which makes sense, right? I mean, so there was a lot of anger behind, I think, what he was never able to purge himself that did leak out into the family. And I wasn't it that, and so I would say that's probably the one thing, or a few things, but one of the main things that I've seen and reflected on now that I'm older about maybe what I wasn't understanding as a man and what it takes to be a man in a family, right? Having kids, having a wife, owning stuff, like having a lot of responsibility, knowing that if it don't, like, it rests squarely on your shoulders, and if you crumble, then everything crumbles. So, um, like I said, I think he was a great role model. Like, I mean, just with what he did and how much he poured into me. But again, there's certain things, as a man, you can only be prepared so much. And I think my dad did the best that he could, and he's a great. I mean, I wouldn't trade him in for the world. I wouldn't trade anything, good, bad, or indifferent, because I learned so much. But yeah, I do wish that I would have had a little bit more of an opportunity to learn from him about what it means to be a man in a relationship from his perspective. Actually, have that talk. We never had that talk.
Got
Yeah,
you. So
yeah,
based on that, you kind of touched on it a little bit. So based on that, how are you going to raise your son?
yeah.
Based on, what you've learned, like you just said, the good and the bad from your dad, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your dad was solid, but it was some huge voids that was created because of the things that he didn't do. What
Mm-hmm.
do you take from that? Yeah, and how are you going to apply that to your son?
Yeah, that's interesting because I haven't really thought about that so much as what can I do to make sure that I have the same kind of upbringing or better upbringing than the way I had things, because my dad exposed me to a lot of things. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was playing the piano, I was taking French lessons when I was young. You know what I'm saying? He had me in tennis clubs, you know what I mean? Like running, like at 5 o'clock in the morning, doing Tai Chi, watching the sunrise. So that kind of stuff is like what I'm trying to think about, how I can actually even like meet or exceed that level. You know what I'm saying? I think when it comes to what it is that I would miss, or that he missed growing up, I think that it's more about letting my son know that I love you, and you are, worthy, and you know what I'm saying, you're doing a great job, and I'm always gonna be here, that kind of stuff. I think my dad showed that, but he would never say that. That's nothing that he ever said. Um, I did forget to say that when you asked me the question, what are some things that were missing? But yeah, the only reason why I was reminded of not saying that is because of the question you just asked, like what would you want to give your son growing up, right? And I would just, give him more words of affirmation. You know what I mean? Like, I do that a lot in my job as it is. Words of affirmation to the kids that I educate on a daily. So you got to do the same. You know what I mean? The stuff that works with kids that you don't know, I mean, that you don't raise, they're not your blood. You probably should do the same thing with the kids that you do raise and that are your blood. You know what I mean? So I think that's one thing that my dad didn't necessarily do. Um, that probably he could have, if he would have done, would have helped, especially my sister. That would have definitely helped her. Um, yeah, yeah,
Thanks for sharing that. Second
yeah.
question. The third question. Explain the transition of pre-fatherhood to fatherhood. So, that life before kids,
Hmm.
you know,
Hmm.
uh, to then all of a sudden, boom, you're a dad.
Yeah,
What
yeah,
was that transition like? That those early years.
yeah. Well, so I'm a little, I'm like middle aged. I'm like 44. So this is like my second biological kid, like my third kid. Um, so when I was in Baltimore spending time out there, I ended up having a daughter and not working out with the mom. At the time, I was like maybe 29 years old. So just a whole lot of just pain and just, ups, very just raw feelings on both sides. Um, right now I'm engaged in like a whole battle around that still. You know what I'm saying? And I've been paying child support the entire time, just trying to get some time with my daughter. Spent a whole bunch of money in the court just over the last year, and nothing has even really moved. You know what I'm saying? I got a settlement conference on the 15th of September, and then after that, we're going to see if we actually can settle or if we need to go to trial, and because I want to have access, which I've always asked for, is access to my daughter. And she, doesn't want that because I moved away. I didn't want to really live there anymore. There's a lot. I mean, it's neither here nor there, but, I've always maintained my daughter. I've always let everybody know who she is and to want a relationship with that. So I think that when I had her, I was already put in a deficit where you got this certain amount of money that you got to pay every single month before you can even put food in your mouth, before you can even take care of anything that has to do with you. This has to be taken care of first. So I think before that, I was just extremely like, I was going to say I was more selfish, right? Because I'm only about, making money for myself, doing what I want to do for myself, and then my friends and my family, of course, but not your next of kin, not your children. You know what I'm saying? That's a whole different type of ball of wax. So, I mean, now my daughter, she's almost 16, and been doing that for 16 years. And then my wife now, she had a child before me, and but he's been my son ever since we met, ever since we know each other. He calls me dad. He's taking my last name. Um, Unfortunately, his dad isn't in his life at all. I think he was a little bit upset as soon as I came in, his former woman's life, I mean, whatever the case may be, but he left her alone. She never denied him access to her, to his son, none of that. Um, but, just something he chose not to do. It is what it is. Um, Dude is a great kid. You know what I'm saying? He's going to college, like he'll be going to Sac State in a couple of months, or actually not even a couple of months, a couple of weeks. And he's thinking about transferring into X-ray school, X-ray tech. So, smart kid, got a good head on his shoulders, knows what he wants. Um, so I've already had an opportunity to really pour into him a lot, which has been awesome. Like just seeing him blossom and calm down and just kind of more acquiesce to like my energy, not trying to force him, but just because I'm constant in his life, constant in the house, like, just doing what needs to happen. Um, but then, with my son now, this would be like the first time I really get a chance to do it, which I would call, quote unquote correctly, because it'd be like me and my wife having our child in wedlock and then being able to raise our child together the way God intended it. So that's like that is a lot, you know what I'm saying, to kind of grapple with where my head has been and what I've been through. Um, but I think that getting prepared for this time has been more of what do we want to look at when it comes to his retirement? What do we want to look at when it comes to, you know, his economic resources by the time he comes of age? We're like really planning, just like super planning into the future, not really tripping so much off of the here and now. For us, it's more even like almost like a vacation, right? Like I get 3 months off. And like I said, I'm in education. My community already knows what's up. So I'm going to take 5 weeks here, 6 weeks there, another 4 weeks there till I get to where I need to go. But I just feel like this one is going to be much more enjoyable. I'm just looking forward to being in an enjoyable time with my son because I think I have the means for it. Whereas before it was like, oh, I don't know what to do. I'm trying to get to, trying to make sure I get the bag and make sure I get this $1,000 off top because that's what's coming out, period. You know what I mean? Like it was a struggle, like, having to scale back on my life, not being able to go out, not being able to, buy clothes, you know what I'm saying, or go to shows and, just trick off money, you know what I mean? Just doing all the things young dudes do. Um, but yeah, but that's the evolution. So that's over 16 years, you know what I'm saying? Um, I went from someone who never was expected or really thinking that I wanted to be married, especially not to the woman I was with at the time, to saying I definitely want a child and I definitely want to be within wedlock when I have this child, and definitely having a presence of mind to know that I already have a really great relationship with my woman before we have a child. It's two completely different things.
Mhm.
So even coming into the situation, it's just been, until you even asked me that question, bro. Like I haven't really thought about it like that. But yeah, it's definitely like different steps, different stages, you know what I mean? As I've grown and matured. Um, you know, and my dad, he kind of went through the same thing. Like, he married his first wife, ended up that That didn't work out, ended up trying to be with someone else. That didn't work out. And then met my mom, and they've been riding ever since for 45 years. You know what I'm saying?
Got you. Next question. As a young father, what was your biggest fear?
That I wasn't gonna make it. Man, I had so many demons at one point, bro. Oh my goodness. That's a whole other story. I mean, literally, that was probably my first, I mean, without getting off the subject too much, but that was my first real introduction to like what demons can actually do, and how demons can actually really influence your thoughts and your feelings. Because I was on a completely like just destructive path. Um, and not to the point of where I was like self-harming or anything like that, or like, taking a whole bunch of drugs, but I was just very negative. Like anything that anybody would say, anything that, I would come up against, I was always just looking at it from a negative perspective. I mean, I was still in education. I was a teacher at the time, you know what I mean? Like still making money, but man, like it was just I was so mad about the situation. Like it was not what I intended, what I wanted. And but I was doing everything that would, of course, assume that outcome. If you sleeping with women raw, what do you expect? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, what are you doing? So I'd slap myself like several times over, you know what I mean, as a young father, like, bruh, if you didn't want this outcome, then why are you doing the things that are going to create this outcome? Stupid.
That's what I
You
tell
know,
I'm like, hey, if you don't want to be on punishment, if you don't want me to take away your clothes, you don't want me to cut your hair off, you know what I'm saying? Like, 'cause,
right,
tell them, like, all of that's bonuses. I don't have to do that.
right.
I just got to keep you clothed. That don't mean you it got to have designer labels on it, and you wearing like fancy shoes, and you wearing your hair like these other youngsters, whatever. Like, nah, we gonna cut it. We gonna cut it how I want it. We gonna cut it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so I tell him that all the time when he get in trouble because he had a rough year last year. And I,
Mm-hmm.
dude, you can't keep doing the same thing you're doing, and then you get mad. Like you keep repeating the same behavior. And
Dude, and the thing is, to that point, a lot of men, and they're never gonna admit this, but I'm gonna say it. Like a lot of men, we don't actually mature into our age. We still stuck in like the same mentality that we were when we were kids, because
exactly.
we listen to the same trash from our friends who are continuously egging us on in the wrong direction. We continue to listen to the music that eggs that on. We continue to look at these movies that eggs that on, and then we listen to these politicians and entertainers whose lives are a mess, and we see it destruction in real time, and we still pedestalize these fools.
Yeah,
So I was doing all that, man. I was completely in the world, and I didn't take no responsibility for what I was doing at the time. And but that was definitely my biggest fear, that I wasn't gonna make it. You know what I'm saying? I felt that, this was gonna cripple me completely. Um, I was gonna be in a circumstance where, I would die young. I would be broke. I'd be by myself, bitter, alone, all that stuff. Just before they were calling people this like incel type shit. Like that's what I was afraid of, because I was like, man, I'm jaded as hell with these women. Like, the way I looked at it, I was like, oh, she did me dirty, blah 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 blah. And there was dirty shit she did, but I'm not going to air all that out. But at the same time, there was shit I did that I shouldn't have put myself in there in the first damn place. So if
right.
I would have been thinking properly from jump, then she couldn't have done anything to put me in a position that I wouldn't already have put myself in. So can't blame her, only blame me.
Yeah,
That was my mentality as a young man. And after I had my child, I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna get myself together. You know what I'm saying? Because when I do have the opportunity to be with my daughter, I want her to be proud of her father,
yeah.
even though the circumstances would probably, be a lot, that a hill that I have to climb, because not being there.
Got you. So
But
yeah, the second part to that question is what was your biggest challenge as a young father? What was your biggest?
yeah, yeah. I mean, it was definitely trying to come to grips with what I had done. Um, the predicament I put myself in, not being able to stay in Baltimore. the shame that came with all that. Um, you know, the reconciling of my own legacy and my own just legacy really, because it's like damn, like this is not, it's not the way I was raised, it's not what I wanted. Um, but again, like I'm not, I can only blame me, you know what I'm saying? So basically it was just from that moment that I could get on my feet and get my money right and, do what I needed to do. Um, I mean, eventually I got married, you know what I'm saying? Been with my wife almost 10 years now. And we're having our first kid together. And we've been in a good place. And that gave me the opportunity to actually be in my daughter's life because her mom finally wanted to have a conversation, but that was webs of deception back to the same stuff. But is what it is because at least there's a line of communication. I've been trying to keep it open as much as possible. Like I said, uphill battle. So that was definitely the challenge that was presented to me. The crazy thing is that a lot of men, and this I don't know if this statistic is actually still the truth now, but a lot of men don't actually have to pay or don't have to pay child support. A lot of women actually are living with single moms or whatever. Pops ain't even paying child support. I was one of the ones who was. You know what I mean? Um, and so I had to pay for it. Like I had to understand what it is, and it's support for the child. I mean, she's remarried now too. She's living her life and doing what she wants to do. But there's also it's this black sheep. It's or this pink elephant in the room. Like, okay, we need to discuss this. Like, how are we gonna move forward? In a way that's going to be amicable. Um, but yeah, that's been challenging. Trying to like creating a whole nother family, and then being like, this ain't really necessarily working for me. I got to do something different. That's challenging. You know what I'm saying? To actually say that, hey, yo, that's what I did. Um,
Yeah.
and you know, and like even like looking my daughter in the face and having to have that conversation with her. I just had that conversation with her like last summer. I was like, hey, like, she asked me, did you have any regrets? And I was like, yeah, I had regrets, like leaving you for sure. But at the same time, I have my wife in my life now. So it's like I wouldn't trade that in. You know what I mean? And I know that the Bible talks about the order, right? Putting God first, spouse, and then your children. Um, I feel that that's always a challenge when you're talking to a person who's your next of kin, but is not in the same household as you. She's in a completely different household with a completely different father. I'm in a completely different household with completely different kids. How
Yeah.
do you fit in with each other? You know what I'm
Let me,
saying?
let me ask you this. Based on that, what advice would you give to young men out here that don't have any kids, right? But they out here moving like that. They just out here just hooking up on girls, women left and right. Um, what advice would you give them based on your experiences, right? Because like you said, even though because you and your daughter's mother, um, y'all were in a relationship. It wasn't like a random hookup, right?
Yeah, yeah. It wasn't a random hookup. No,
So y'all was in a relationship, right? But it wasn't a good relationship. Am I correct?
no.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. Right.
So that's
I
what
mean, when I got with her, just a little, just a little background before you finish your question. I mean, we met each other on the job. She was married at the time. I
Hmm.
mean, she was getting a divorce, but she was still married. Now, biblically, you're wrong.
Exactly.
And you know what I'm saying? I'm sitting up here playing stepdad to her two sons
Mm.
in a situation and I didn't even have no kids.
Mhm.
Um, I had my own place doing my own thing, but I was also in a very vulnerable position because I was in a place that I wasn't from, chasing a woman who I thought I wanted to be with. That shit didn't work out, and that shit crushed me. So I'm rebounding. I'm trying to like do what it is that I think I need to be doing.
Sound like y'all was both rebounds.
Right, exactly. It's 100%.
Yeah, because like she
Yeah.
was a divorce, she used to having, that man there and that dad there. Next thing you eager coming along. So it's like, ooh, I could pick off where I left. I could pick up where I left
Mm-hmm.
off.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Mm-hmm. And it's we young at the time, we in our 20s.
yeah.
You know what
So
I'm saying?
I
Like
was,
it's
so it's that's one part, right?
mhm.
Young dudes that that's just out here living random, right? Just reckless, right? They're not thinking about, dang, what if I have a kid with this girl? I'm only laying down with her because she got a big butt, or I'm laying down with her because she cute, right? That's one side of it. Then you got the other side of it, like your experience, you know, men and women that get in these rebound relationships. You know what I'm saying? They're not really looking at it from a clear, mind state, right? And then the third one, people that get in and stay in toxic relationships. So
Ooh.
based on those
Mm.
three, paths that, sadly people do, stay on and follow. What advice would you give a young man? Perfect example, one day your son, when your son gets to be,
Hmm.
like out of high, graduated now, he a grown man. He can do whatever he want. What advice you gonna give him when it comes to that based on your fear and your challenges that you experienced because of the bad decisions you made? What advice would you give somebody in the
Oh
most simple
yeah.
terms? Like you're not giving no lecture. You know what I'm saying? Like in simplest terms. What would you tell them?
I would just tell him to stop.
Mm.
I mean,
And
you
why?
know, um, because you're messing with yourself physically, mentally, and spiritually. You're completely messing your whole like nervous system up. You're just messing it up, and you would have a hard time being able to trust women. You'd have a hard time being able to pair with a woman to do what's necessary to actually live your life the best way you actually should be living it. I mean, there's a lot of animals out here that, they have a lot of different mates and whatnot, but there's a difference between animals and us. We're not animals. We don't have to be out here doing with a whole bunch of, different people. You know what I'm saying? Um, you can get a lot of, I mean, it's just like, it's cliche, but it's like you can get diseases. You can have like, children out of wedlock, you know what I mean, that you don't necessarily care for because you don't care about their mom. Now it's going to cost you a whole bunch of money to take care of it because you got that responsibility. And now it puts you in a position of where you can't do what is necessary for that woman that you are going to be with in the future. Or even if you just don't even want that and you want to do something else, like you're not going to be able to live your purpose because you've you've now like crippled yourself, like you've put yourself in this position. Now children are of course precious burdens. I believe children are great. You know what I mean? I don't believe in abortion. I believe that you should, definitely have your child. And I definitely feel like you should take care of your child and take care of your responsibility. But the best way of doing that is making sure, as much as I can say this, I mean, just try to see if you can just be with one person. So
Got it.
if you young and like you a teenager and you seen that girl, oh, she look good, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, how are you gonna take care of her? Do you want to be with her for the rest of your life? Do you want to have children by her? Are you ready for that? Are you ready to be taking care of anybody? If
Got
the answer to those questions are no, then you shouldn't be doing that kind of stuff.
got it.
Honestly.
So part three to this question. What's your biggest regret as a youngest father? You talked about fear. Talked about your biggest challenge.
Mm-hmm.
What's your big you have what was you look back on things? What's your biggest regret?
I mean, just, being completely consumed with women.
Mm.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, just completely, like, that was my goal, is just to be with a woman. I mean, ever since I was young, man, I just always like women. You know what I mean? I guess that's a really good thing, right? I mean, you want,
Same, same.
it's just, I
Guys,
mean, from the,
you guys, my mom.
bro,
That's all I used to talk about. Like, hey, I'm gonna get
dude,
married. Mom, I'm gonna get married. Mom.
yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, I just like if you're a man, you like the opposite sex. Like if you're a boy, you like generally speaking, that's what you like. I mean, that's been this oldest rhyme. I mean, this day and age, people are, I believe in social engineering, people doing what they're doing, whatever. I'm not gonna get into all that, but
it don't help that I got a bunch of aunties, like a bunch
mhm,
growing up. Oh, he's so handsome. He's so handsome. That don't help none. So
doesn't help.
so it made me aware. Like, yeah. I'm not the average little boy. So, and then when I get to school, I never told you the story. I was at elementary school, dude, like kindergarten or first grade. Yeah, kindergarten, first grade. The little girls
Hmm.
jumped me. They jumped me, took my t-shirt, and put kisses all over it. I kid you not.
Wow.
So it's like
Wow.
experiencing that as a little, you know what I mean, little youngster, it's just like, "Ooh, okay, I like girls, they like me."
Right. Exactly. This is the way it's supposed to be. You know what I'm saying? As American as apple pie. You know, feel me?
So,
Like, I
so,
mean, look,
so based on all that, your biggest fear, your biggest challenge, your biggest regret, what
yeah,
have you learned overall? What have you learned overall? Because now you're in a very great spot, right? Like you said,
hmm
you had that situation with your daughter 16 years ago.
hmm
And you got with your wife now who had a son, right?
hmm
But now, like you said, you're in your mid 40s. You know, you're establishing your career. You have a lot of knowledge. You know, a lot of you turn that into wisdom. So, based on everything that you've learned, based on everything that you experienced, what have you learned moving forward now? Because now you got this third baby on the way. Like you said, you can do it right now, right? So, based on that, what's your stance now?
I mean, honestly, I'll say that you got to trust in God, number one. I mean, with all things are possible through God. You know what I mean? Everything. So, but you really got to believe. You really got to be in tuned.
Hmm.
And you got to understand that part of part of God's purpose for your life is that you have to go through trials and tribulations. It's just a part of life, and it doesn't matter. Like if you coming from super humble beginnings, you ain't got nothing. You know what I mean? Roaches on the floor. You don't know if the lights are gonna be on. You know what I'm saying? Like your roof is caving in. You know what I mean? You got eviction notices, all that kind of shit, right?
Hmm.
To Silver Spoon, you got butlers. You know what I'm saying? Taking care of you. You know what I mean? You was always in some type of boarding school and always having some type of entourage and everything in between. God first. You know what I mean? But I think that uh, you know, really what it comes down to is understanding that the most important decision, one of the most important decisions you'll ever make in your life is your partner.
Yeah,
So whoever you choose, choose wisely
gotcha.
and understand that as a man, your position is to take care of her.
Hmm.
That is your job. Your job is not to, you're not equal. And I don't mean that in terms of like, men and women are unequals and men are higher than women or women are higher than men. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that we as men, we can't have children. So therefore, how can we be equal when it comes to children? A child is going to be more into a woman when, she has been carrying the child for 9 months.
Hmm.
So there might be some difference there, right? And that's just one example. Another example, men doing all these crazy jobs, you know what I mean? That like women would never do. Like no women aren't going to suspend and put, pour concrete and you know what I'm saying? Like do all the kinds of like skyscraper, jobs where they're lifting cranes and doing all heavy machinery type of stuff. I mean, you might see one here and there, but that's generally not what they do, what women do. So we have two different attributes. Your job is to make sure you take care of your woman.
Hmm.
And you can only do that if you really love her and you put some skin in the game. So and the ultimate is you having a child out of that situation.